Alrighty, we're live. So happy Wonder Wednesday, everyone. Welcome back to our Floxies community. I hope this video finds you well, whether you're watching us now live or whether you'll be watching us in the future. If you are watching us now, let us know in the chat where you're joining us from. And if you've been a regular here at Floxies, and if this is your first time, we are an international community for women in UX, UI design, and Webflow development. And every week, every Wednesday, we gather here inviting guest speakers from either the design or the Webflow space to come and inspire our community members. So without further ado, let me share my screen and show you our metaverse, which is where we host our live streams every Wednesday. I should have done this before, but let's do it now because why not? And if you've been following us, we started off a kind of summer camp this August, and we've been looking at HTML and CSS. And so today is our final episode. We've been having about 4 lessons on this topic, and so we're very grateful to Ailin Tobin, our expert guest speaker, who was here with us teaching us all about HTML and CSS in Webflow. And so today we will be looking at MAST, which is a framework that you can use to optimize your builds when you're developing on Webflow. So let me share my screen. There we go. So this is our metaverse. This is actually what you're looking at right now is our co-working space on Gathertown, where we work together sometimes. And so let's go into, let's get to our auditorium with our Floxies and with our guest speaker here. So hi everyone, happy Wonder Wednesday and welcome to our last episode of our summer camp / HTML CSS Masterclass with Ailin Tobin. Ailin, thank you so much once again for being our teacher for about a month. I'm sure that lots of people here learned a ton from you. I'm gonna rewatch all our lessons because you know you can never get enough HTML and CSS in your life, and I know that it's something that it's kind of a muscle in your brain that you have to build, and the more you practice it, the easier it'll become. So at least that's how I feel about it. And so I know that we'll be looking into HTML and CSS, how to build a hero, best practice, client first as a framework. And today we'll be looking at MAST, which is another framework that you can use to optimize your builds. But maybe you can introduce a little bit better and tell us a little bit more about what we'll be doing today.
Thanks, Claudia. And it's been really fun this last four weeks. It's probably pushing 5 weeks now. I've really enjoyed it. Um, so today the last couple of weeks, we're looking um, at Client First, and which is a framework specific to Webflow development. And this week we're looking at MAST, which is closer to what one would do if they were building using CSS traditionally. So that's probably the first distinction between them. Client First is specific to Webflow, whereas MAST is more conventional. And they both have um, pros and cons, but
Maria
they're
says
both
must is a must.
MAST is a must. So 2 weeks ago I built out a very straightforward hero section. So I think I'm going to do the same today with MAST.
Awesome.
So
And
what?
we'll also be looking at some exercises from our Floxies last week. So that was really interesting to see how they developed kind of hero pages using client first. And I wonder, you know, after our intro to MAST today, maybe we can try and reproduce something similar in the future, and maybe we'll send them over to you to review.
Yeah, no problem. If people want to do that, I can easily do 5-minute Loom videos going through what people have done. There's no problem with that.
You're
Just-
too kind. That's amazing.
I suppose the first thing is has anybody any questions on what we did last week, or did anybody try out building in using Client First? If there is someone out who has done something and wants a quick look, we can do that for maybe the first 5 or 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm. I think we looked at Andrea's project last week. It's great to see you, Gabrielle. I know you've been away for a while. Great to see you back with us. Carice says, I did try a little in Figma, but not good enough to share. Hmm. What do you think, Ailin? whenever people say that, I always
There's
feel
always, you can always
obliged to be
learn.
like push them. It's like it's always good. There's always something to look at, but I don't want to force anyone.
The thing is if something was built out in Figma, potentially, like, I wouldn't want to review someone's Figma work. I'm a dev more than a designer. It'd be more what we would do on Webflow. So if it's on Webflow, yeah, we could go through it, and everything is worth a review. I was even looking at a project I did 2 years ago, and I'm looking back on it, and I can see improvements that I should have done at the time. So everything can be reviewed. But if not, if there isn't anything, I'll just go straight into MAST, and if we've time at the end, we can review some stuff then as well.
Sure, Caris, is it just in Figma, or did you also try translating it into Webflow? I guess just in Figma. All right, that's absolutely fine. Share that in our Discord, please, if you want, because it would be interesting to see the process from your Figma file onto Webflow, and we can get other Floxies to help out if you would like to do that. All right, without I'm not going to interrupt anymore. So Ailin, over to you.
Okay, so I'm just going to share this full window. I'm going to go into infinity. Okay, so we can all see this, yeah?
Yeah.
So this, yeah, so MAST it's a framework. Was built by Corey. He works in Webflow, and as you can see here, it's a lightweight. He describes it as a lightweight development first framework. So it's very different to client first. And yeah, we'll just kind of go through. So one of the first things is when we're working with MAST is that in client first things, they don't want abbreviations, whereas you can see here straight away in MAST, their heading classes are already abbreviated. And when we come down through the different classes that are pre-built, there's a lot of abbreviations here in MAST. So that's the first major difference between client first and MAST. So with both of them, if you think of them as languages, you're going to have to learn the basic structures of the language so that it becomes intuitive and quick. So when we go down through, there's a few little things that we should note. The U here stands for utility, which indicates that we've got a utility class. They also have CC, which stands for a combo class, and various different, and there's a few things that are going through like that. So what I'll do is I'm going to come over here to the style guide, and you can see here that we've got our headings straight away. So we've got our heading semantic HTML over here, and then we've got our class H1. So you'll see it's nicely laid out here on the MAST framework website. Then we start coming down, you can see that we've got our paragraph styles in relation to our paragraph semantic HTML. So that's the one thing, obviously would be the same throughout any framework, is that our semantic HTML is different to our classes. And one of the things here is that sizes are, they use, with MAST we use numbers to indicate size, as opposed to with client first it's a more we're using words like large, extra large, and these kind of things. So what another major thing when we go down through here, we're going to come down to layouts. We got section, container, and grids. So in the same way that we built out our client first, everything has the same structure. We'll go section, container, grid. And before that, we would have our page wrapper, our main and our page wrapper. The big difference here is that with MAST, they don't want you to repeat class names. Whereas with client first, they want the class to be specific to what we're working on. Now, I suppose we'll start the demonstration and I'll go through what the difference between that is. So I'm here inside in Webflow, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a div, and I'm going to add in a page wrapper. Now it's already got a bit of styling here, bit of background color. It doesn't need to have that, but that's just what's inside. So what I've done is I've cloned the MAST clonable. I'm going to add in another div and going to make this our main. And now I'm going to start adding in some sections. Okay, so here we are. We've got the class of section. And now this is just one class. We're just going to leave it as section, and we're going to repeat that throughout the site. So with client first, you remember this would be called section hero or section header. Whereas with MAST, it's the one class. You repeat that class. You don't repeat. You wouldn't make a second class unless you were making a custom class. So we've just put down a div. We've called it section. So I need to make sure that it's got the right HTML tag. So I'm going to give it a tag of section. And you can see that from the clonable that we've got padding top and bottom. So we don't need to add any additional padding to this. We can manipulate this padding, but we don't need to add any. And already, as we go down through the different screen sizes, this padding here is responsive. So you can see we've got a 4 over here, 5, and 8. See if I can zoom in a bit there. Okay, so I've built the section. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add another div, and I'm going to make this a container. And you can see that we've got the pre-built styles. So another difference is that the container width here is at percentage, whereas with client first, the container width is 100%. And then there's padding around that. Whereas with this, it's a percentage of the screen width. And so the containers never go to the full width of the screen. Now, when we're going inside the container, what we do next is we create a row. And all of these classes can be used throughout. They're the exact same class that we use throughout the site. We haven't made anything custom yet. And in the row, I'm going to add a col. And I'm going to duplicate that. So you can see here we've got 2 cols inside our row. So you can see the structure here, the basic structure of our HTML, whether it's very straightforward, very simple, very easy to follow. We've got
can you give us a quick reminder on the best practice there? So what if as the expert developer that you are, what do you look for now you are what do you look for in terms of the best looking HTML structure there? What does he have to do to tick the boxes?
So you start with a page wrapper, and the page wrapper, it does what it says in the tin. It wraps the whole page of the website, of the particular page. Now, the main reason for that is just to contain everything inside it. One of the best reasons, or one of the easiest things you can do with that, is if you're trying to copy a whole page over from one Webflow page to the next, it makes it nice and easy to just copy, and then you can see here if I duplicate it, I can paste it all. Whereas if you don't put things in a page wrapper, you have to duplicate individual elements. So we put everything inside the page wrapper. Then I've gone straight to a page main, but on top of the page main, we would add, this is where your nav would go. And then you'd have your page main. So what's happening here is Google is reading from this part of the site right the way down, and it's starting to read here, and it's looking for our nav, which will have our links and our first bit of navigation, and it'll be able to go through the site. But if it's looking for an answer, it looks for our main. And I didn't turn this into a main, so that tag there should be set as a main.
Is that a mistake? There you go.
Yeah, I made a mistake here. So that'd be the first thing, is make sure that I don't make mistakes. So we've got our main, and inside our main, we'll have our sections. So we can have multiple sections inside here. And then once we get inside our sections, that's where we'll have answers to the questions that Google is looking for. So how to develop using MAST. That, for example, once it finds a section, inside the section, it's going to look for a H1 in the first section, and then it's going to look for H2s in the following sections.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
So we're inside our section. We're making a hero section here. And I'm going to go into the first call. And now I'm going to add in this. And if you, since we started this, Webflow launched this new feature where instead of typing in heading, you type in H1 or H2, which makes it a little bit faster to develop, which is pretty awesome. So I'm putting in a H1, and I'm going to put that head H1 here. And then I'm going to add in a paragraph for underneath, and I'm going to add in a button. Now, you can see that here we've got our H1, our paragraph, and our button. I'm going to style them according using the pre-built MAST classes. So I'm going to call this a H1. I'm going to this a paragraph 1.25 and give this a class of button. Now on the other side, on this other column, I'm going to add in an image. And what I'm going to do is we're going to create a responsive image in the same way we did a few weeks ago. So I'm going to make get a div, add in a div here, and this div is going to wrap our image. Now, one of the this is a lovely feature about MAST is that if you type in aspect, you see we got our utility class aspect 101. So they've already built out these features for us. But this means now we've got a nice responsive div that we're going to add our image inside. I'm just going to pop in this image, and to make sure that this image fits this div here, I'm going to type in image utility image cover. So I know I did that quite quick, so I'll just explain what's after going on here.
Mm-hmm.
So the U aspect 101 is a wrapper of the image, which has a width of 100% and a padding of 100%. So what that means is that everything is going to be square, that this particular div is going to be square. So if I remove, I'll just remove the image, and I'm going to give this, just for this purpose, I'm going to give it a background color of orange. So you can see here we've got this orange square. So this will respond throughout the site. It'll always stay as a square. So if I start zooming out here, you can see it's always going to stay as a square. Now what we're doing in this particular div here, so it has an overflow of none, or overflow hidden. That means that nothing is going to break outside that particular div. Everything is going to be contained inside it. And then it is set to position relative. So what that means is we're able to put stuff inside that are position absolute, and they will stay within this particular square. So that's why when I put in an image, so the first thing is if you put in an image here without any styling, it gets pushed to the bottom. Now, what's the reason for that? It's this padding here has pushed it to the bottom. So this padding of 100% is, if you can see, the padding is equal to the width. And because this image here is set to static, it's getting pushed to the bottom of that padding. So the padding is working like padding. But when we add this class of cover, image cover, utility image cover, it makes the image absolute,
Mm-hmm.
and it covers the whole div. So it sits on top of the padding. But because we've got this aspect ratio, this aspect that has overflow is hidden, nothing's going to break outside it. So we've got this perfect square that will respond across all screens. So,
and there's documentation for all this, right? It's not just like, people try out MAST and out of the blue they know all these little shortcuts or classes. There's documentation.
Yeah, they're all the
go.
documentation is in here. Yeah. So if we go in here, there's quite an extensive style guide or documentation explaining all of this. But what I'm trying to compare it to is if when I built this section, this particular component with client first, I'll write it out what I did so that we can compare it. What I did here was I made a custom class called Hero.
Or Hermione.
I usually call it image wrapper. And I had to create padding in the exact same way. In the exact same way that so I would have made a custom class as opposed to, why can't I find my position? There we go. Position relative. And then I made a class of image. I would have had to make that absolute and given it a width of 100%. 100%.
So now, that's about 2 to 3 minutes. What you just done. That you can save.
Yeah, it would take a minute. It would take an extra minute. So it's a bit quicker. But in theory, this isn't incorrect for MAST either, because we've now made a custom class. But what MAST would disagree with here is because that custom class is the exact same as the utility class, they would advise you not to do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because that would be duplicating the process, and
you're duplicating
so it wouldn't be a clean code. Look at that. I'm understanding more of a development language. I'm very far from turning into anything else. So Maria says, but you'll still be able to use again.
Yeah. So the thing that MAST doesn't want you to do is to have multiples of the exact same thing. Multiple classes performing the same function, whereas client first doesn't mind if you have that, because they've got different, there's different reasoning for it. So client first wants you to be able to see wants everything to be connected to that section and to be able to read it easily, whereas MAST wants things more utility classes. So I'm going to change this back to the aspect, and I'm going to change this to cover. Okay, so that's the first. That would be not the first, but that would be one of the differences there. That if you can find a utility class, use it, or if you create a utility class, if you've noticed something repeating throughout your MAST build, turn it into a utility class and use it multiple times. Now,
sorry to interrupt again. Maria's making a good point about in client first, you could set these as global classes. Is that something you can do in MAST as well?
Yeah. I suppose the thing with MAST is that more things are global classes than, or global classes than in client first. But yes, you could create it as a global class, or you could have a custom class that you repeat. So yeah, that's definitely true. So now the last day I'm going to show we've an understanding. I'll just do we're going to talk about Rems and EMs, because this is one of the differences. It's probably the most fundamental difference of how the size guiding inside an MAST is. So
let me concentrate, because this is one of the topics I always struggle with.
Okay.
All right, I'm focused.
So you're focused. So we've got, I'll just go through it nice and quickly, that 16 pixels, generally 16 pixels is equal to 1 rem. Right?
Yes.
So if we want to have something that is 8 pixels, we will make it 0.5. 4 pixels, we will have it at 0.25. Okay, our 16 pixels, we will set it up as 2 rem. Now, that's the same throughout. So what an rem does is it takes from the body. So it takes the size from the body which here you can see is set to 1 rem, and it multiplies that. So that's where it comes from. It finds the base size of the body and multiplies by that size.
So that
Now
should be 32 pixels, right? Because it's 2 rem.
that's right. That should be 32, not 16. Well done.
Oh, Maria gave me an assist.
Now, if you see here with MAST, they're using EMs as their as putting a bit of margin on the bottom. So if we're building with client first, we would have had margin bottom and then the margin size. Whereas with MAST, they have given the classes all have a slight bit of padding, which is in EMs. And what an EM does is it calculates based off the size of the parent. So Rems calculates all the ways to the body, whereas the EMs calculates off the closest parent. So in this instance, it's itself.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So this is where things get complicated. And I'll show you this is the example now. When we're using padding, I'll put some padding on the bottom of this here. So I'll put some margin, sorry. So I'm going to call MB3. So what I've done here is I've got the utility class margin bottom tree. And what that means is we are adding tree EM to the bottom of the aspect of this image. So you can see it there. It's just highlighted at the bottom. It's tree, and that equals 3 times 1. So we've got our tree rem here. So it's the exact same as tree rem, or 3 times 16. Now, if I add this to here, look at the difference. See the
Wait,
amount
what
of
happens?
margin.
What's UMB?
So U stands for utility.
Yeah.
M stands for margin, and B stands for bottom, and tree is the tree EM. But
Okay.
what I want to show you is, and what I might do is I'm going to put this copy a button. I'm going to put it into here. Now we have our image, which has the exact same class, utility class, margin, bottom, tree. But look at the difference between this H1 and this aspect ratio, the hero image. They've got the exact same number here at the bottom, exact same number, but the margin at the bottom is greater. Now, why is that? Because the EM is calculating 3 times, 3 times 5.5 REM. So we've got, what's that, 16.5 REM of margin here. Does that make sense?
You might have to say that one more time.
Okay. We have got,
And I'm sorry if the girls in the community, I'm just like, this feels like my own private class, but Maria's giving me a thumbs up. So maybe, yeah, Margie's also saying yes, please. So it's not just me being absolutely thick.
no, there's the EMs. So when I started using, first time I read MAST, when I saw EMs, I was like, I'm out of here. I have no interest. So this is not anybody in any way, it is complicated. I'll try and make this a little bit easier by, I'll get rid of this call and I'll duplicate this one. Oops. we'll turn this into a H3 just for, there we go. And we're going to put MB3. Now, this might make it a little bit, so this H3 is, now, this might help. We've got a class of H1 over here and a class of H3 here. Both of them have a utility class which has a margin bottom of 3. And that margin bottom is 3EM. So you can see here, we've got our 3EM and 3EM. So they look the exact same. But what this EM is calculating from is this number here, 1.8 REM, and equally it's calculating from 5.5 REM. And why is that? Because the size of the font for a H1 is 5.5, and for a H3 is 1.8. Now, that is complicated, but what we're doing here is we're multiplying 1.8 by 3 EM to create this margin bottom. And here, equally, we're calculating 5.5 by 3 to create this margin.
All right, this is a little bit more clear. I do have a question. We know that 16 pixels equals to 1 REM. How do we measure EMs instead? What's the measurement there? Where do we get 1 EM from?
Okay, so the EM comes from the parent or the closest parent. So in this instance, you can see the H1 here has, if I update the H1 to 1, you can see the margin changed, or if I change it to 2, now the margin is multiplying, so it's the closest parent is what the EM calculates from.
So it doesn't have a set measurement. It's not like REM, that 16 pixel is measuring whatever comes from the parent.
Yes, whereas the REM measures from the body. So the REM skips all of that and just measures from the body, whereas the EM measures from the parent. And now that can be the closest parent. So you could have like a card that has a size in it, and everything inside the card has no custom sizes, and it will calculate from the card. So if you're to go down this route, the way to use EMs is to always keep the calculation as close as possible. That would be my advice. Now, this, if we have, so we're just going, this paragraph here, I'm going to give this a paragraph. We don't have, I'm just going to create, yes, 1.25. So the same here is if we add an MB1 to this, this here is not 16 anymore. It's 16 by 125. I think that's 20 pixels that we have down here. Now, the reason for it is responsiveness. It keeps the margin or the padding relative. Like with typography, I can see a use case for it. It makes sense that if you're trying to keep a design relative, the spacing between your heading and then the next div underneath it relative, then EMs make sense. So whereas if you are using, because as this cascades down, this spacing here should change size according to the size of the typography. Now, what makes this a little bit more complicated is if we're adding we want to put some margin at the bottom of this particular call. It is still using EMs here, but because the closest parent with a is the body, it is calculating it at 3 by 16 pixels. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was telling you in the chat, it's a little bit of a complicated family, but it makes sense.
It's only complicated. So yeah, this is the most complex part of it. It's complicated when you're using typography and getting your spacing right with typography. But if you only use EMs with typography and think of it that the margin at the bottom relative to the type size, then it's calculating based off the type, which is its parent. But if when you're using these utility classes throughout the rest of your components, provided you haven't put a custom font on a parent, it'll calculate from the body. Now there's another difference
Wait, so
with
if you use a custom font, it doesn't calculate it from the font anymore?
not the custom font, the custom font size. So a custom size on the typography or the sorry, I
Okay,
shouldn't
yeah.
use the word font. So I'll let's work out a use case here of I'm going to build out a card.
Yeah, you're gonna get
So
a lot of
inside this,
questions today, Ailin. I'm sorry.
that's all right.
Margie actually has a question in the chat. Does that mean that EM will adjust based on the size of the page?
No, it'll adjust based off of the size of the parent font size.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's not responsive in that sense, but it responds according to the font or the parent font size. So we got our. I'm just making a quick card here. Give it a background of white. And I'm just going to put in some. I'm going to put in a H2, H3, and now a H and a paragraph. Okay. And I will. So what utility? Now I've gone super fast here, but I'll explain what I've done. So you can see here we've got our card, we've got our H2 or H3 and our paragraph. This has all been styled from the child. Whereas if we add, we've got our EMs here, our margin at the bottom of this, working based off its parent, which is this class here. If we add, like if we put, for example, let's just see what happens if I put H1 in here. And we get rid of these. So that didn't do what I thought. Okay, so even though we've added this here, so I added the H1, the size is here, the parent, the EM has gone towards the heading tag, which also has a size in there. So it's calculating based off of this. And if I remove and now it's gone down to this.
Oh, hi, Irina. Welcome.
So there we go. But yeah, the EMs calculate off its closest parent, I suppose, is how we should think of it.
Yeah, I think, it makes a bit more sense now. So, and once again, train that muscle, I feel, and get your hands dirty, try out. And if you do get stuck, let us know, because the more we try and do this together, the quicker we learn, I think. And I can feel like I can comfortably say that I've been trying, and Maria, she knows me here, that probably she's the one that knows that has known me for the longest time in this room, and she knows that every year I try with EM and REMs. And I feel like today is the first time that the penny dropped and I understood the basics of it. So thank you for that.
Okay. I suppose if there's any questions there, we can put it open to the floor.
Yeah, people just are just saying, I think I'm just gonna stay away from EMs.
Um, let's not. Yeah, let's not. Let's try. It is complicated. It's more complicated, but once you get used to it, it's not as complicated as we might think. I'm just showing this particular instance here is essentially it's a bug. Why is this so big? So if you were to use, I suppose that this is let's think of it this way. I'm building out this design and I want it to look like this. Actually, I don't. I want it to have a bit more space down here, and I'm thinking I want it to be MB2. Why did that happen? That's what you need to think. So if this is a bug because it's not the design that we want, why has this gone from here to here? If I work on a different platform, it won't do that. What is after happening? If I go MB1, it's closer to what I want, but it's still kind of large. Why is this happening? So if you come across something like this, you need to debug what's going on and understanding that this is an EM, and that it's calculated off here so that this margin is now 11 REM, which is 11 by 16 pixels. So how do we, if we're trying to think, how do we get that down to a much smaller size? So we're going to go through our, maybe we want to make, is there a 0.5? There's not, but we can create one. And we change this to 0.5 EM. Now it's starting to calculate, it's getting smaller. So that's about, yeah, that's about 2.25 REM. And maybe we want it to even be lower. Okay, that's the 2.5. So that's a quarter of 5.5. So I suppose the way to try and think of it is if you saw that and you knew that was the wrong, that was not what the designer wanted, how would you fix it?
Somebody help.
Yeah.
Andrea's laughing. Come on, girls, come and help me out. How would you fix it? Yeah, I would call Maria. Ah, um, nope, nobody's being brave.
Okay.
Ailin,
So the way
change EM to REM
that's, yeah, you could do that. That kind of goes against, yeah, if you did that,
against the law.
it just goes against the MAST framework. If you did that, yeah, it would fix things. Or let's, okay, change EM to REM. Okay, this brings us on to combo classes. So what you would do is you would write combo class MB2, and maybe you would type in rem because it is a 2 rem, and you would change that to 2 rem. That that could work. Yep, that does work, but then you're kind of stuck. You still haven't figured out the problem, but you have fixed the problem. Because if you use this again, we're going to be in the same scenario, essentially.
So what you're trying to do, you're trying to reduce the margin at the bottom?
The padding, yeah. You don't want that padding there, but you want it to be 2 REM.
So you change the H1 text, the size,
You could do that, yeah.
because he's the parent.
Well, if you
Is that a
change the
fix?
size, you're going to change the style of this, but you could manipulate this, yeah. So if we want it to be 2, so what's 2 divided by 5.5? Would that be right? Seems about right.
There's a lot of 36s there.
There is, yeah. There's a lot of 36s.
Margie says add another parent.
That's, we could wrap it, yeah, and we'll call this, but it's even if we do this, we could make this 100, and I don't think that's going to manipulate it because the closest parent is the H1.
We have somebody from YouTube, Juan Peses. Hi, Juan. He says maybe I guess you have to find out what variable the EM value is inheriting, calculating from.
Yep, that's correct.
There you go, Juan. Because he was saying, I feel like the last one, I'm not very good in this class. I was like, well, you're proving yourself wrong. You are really good. Well done.
Yeah. So the variable that it's calculating off is the font size here of 5.5 REM. So if I'll just put in 5.5 by 16. So it's just so that's 88 pixels. And this here is 0.2 of 88 pixels. And that's why we're getting that tiny little margin there.
Great. So basically, it was a little bit like changing the font size.
But if you change the font size, then you're changing the design of
the whole thing.
Yeah. So yeah, you could do that. So but if we change this to 4, then the design changes as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, the EMs they've caught many people out.
They've had many victims behind, I'm sure.
Yeah. I've been caught out many a time with them.
Okay, so Margie says, wait, what did we change at the end of the day? Can we recap? So what was the final solution? I think we looked at where the value was coming from, and that's what Ailin changed.
So one solution, we wanted this to be 2 REM, was to change the margin that's attached to the class. So we decided that 2 divided by 5.5. So what I'm doing here is I'm looking for 2 REM divided by 5 REM will give us will give us the number that will calculate to give us an EM. So 3.36 to infinity multiplied by 5.5 REM equals 2 REM. So that is one solution. And that means that all our H1s are going to have that exact same calculation added to it. Another option would be to add our combo class and actually change it to Rems.
Is that best practice, or does that add more code?
It's a good solution if that's exactly what you want to do there and then. Yeah, but it's not. MAST would prefer you use EMs. But now, so now what we're doing is we're creating a combo class that is based off Rems instead of EMs. So they were the two solutions. There were two solutions. Another one would be to have our utility class MB. So we would have had to create a utility MB 0.36, and then that would have been, which is very unusual to be fair, but then that would be our 2 divided by 5.5, and that will
Yeah,
give us
the 36s.
all
And
our 36s.
just to remind, I guess, all our typical developers out there, why would we be building with this measurements, EMs, REMs, rather than just going into a blank page and using pixels all the way?
Okay, so with pixels, it's fixed. They don't um, they don't respond as well
Mm,
according to screen size. So particularly if someone is hard of seeing, and so I noticed this with my parents and their iPhone, that
yeah,
they've got much bigger icons on their phones now and the bigger text. So
yeah,
Rems multiplies better. It's a better multiplication, and also the design doesn't get manipulated when it multiplies with Rems. Whereas
yeah.
if you're using pixels, viewport width, or percentages, that calculation is subject to the screen width, particularly the screen width, and sometimes the screen height.
Hmm.
Whereas Rems is based off of a number at the body.
Yeah, so it follows more yeah, accessibility rules like Irina saying in the chat. It's better
Yeah,
for
it's
accessibility.
accessibility, but also for the designer, it keeps the design of the designer. It keeps the ratio of the design as well.
Hmm.
Um,
Perfect. Good. Thank you. Thank you for that. What else can we explore in MAST? Or we do have a question from Margie actually. Does that mean I don't need to adjust the text size on every screen if I use REM?
um, yes, that's so. Does that mean you don't have to adjust the text size? Is that what
Yeah,
the question?
if you use REM.
So what if you're using REM? It'll keep. So you can see here this text size is going to change as we go down. 4.8, 3.6, and 2.8. But what it does is that the ratio between here and here stays the same. So visually, it does more what the designer would want, potentially does more what the designer would want. Whereas I'm going to change this to, um, what I'll do is, I'm going to put this combo class here. Okay, so now, but I'll give this the exact same, put this at 0.2 REM. Oh, no, we're not right at the moment. Okay, sorry, give me 1 second and I'll try and explain this in MB. That's what we'll do. So, right. So you can, this is the advantage of having EMs versus Rems. The font size of your design is going to change as we cascade down through the different breakpoints. Now, we are changed with each of these. The font size is going to change. Now, what the REMs does is it keeps the exact same padding. This padding doesn't change. Oh, we're not going to see that properly. So we'll stay in this one. So you can see here that this paragraph has come closer to our H1. So if we wanted this to work with Rems, we have to put in that class. We have to manipulate this ourselves. So we have to change it to like, there's a 0.3 or something. So that's the advantage of using Ms over Rems on typography. I can only really see an advantage on typography, whereas with other, I can't really see it with. There is other use cases, but this would be the main use case. Sorry, did I answer that question?
Yeah, I think so. And also Maria was contributing as well. Awesome. Yeah, she says, if I make my root size bigger in the phone, I'll get a bigger text than the designed one. No, Maria, it's really great. You need to start doing your technical support hour again. Don't forget.
That's exactly what I was trying to say, is the root size. You change the root size on your browser or your phone, then everything will adjust. Yep, perfect.
Brilliant. Client First has that thing which is called Fluid Design Generator. It creates a code to change REM depending on the screen size. This way, your whole design scales with the size of the screen. Interesting. Does MAST have it too?
It doesn't. No, it doesn't have that particular feature, but you could use the Client First fluid responsive calculator, and it should work on MAST as well. It would work on everything that is EMs and REMs based. If there was, but MAST uses pixels, so you can see here. There's pre-built padding inside our call, and also in our row, they're using margins, which is based off of pixels, so they wouldn't respond in that instance.
We also do have a question from the YouTube. Do you think we will see well-known Webflow component libraries ported to MAST as an option, as opposed to the ThinkSuite Client First?
Say that again.
Do you think we will see well-known Webflow component library into MAST as an option, as opposed to the ThinkSuite Client First? I guess like a component library based on MAST.
Actually, there's. Do you guys know Matt? He's a developer from Wales living in Ireland.
Yeah, of course. I do.
I was actually going to talk about this. He's built out this very beta, like it's this company. He's called Sailboat. So I suppose the relationship is Sailboat. It's helping MAST. I was actually going to talk about this, but he has created these copy and paste components. It's the very genesis of with this kind of filter system, and you can actually just let's try and you can just copy these things in, and it just helps you start your build.
Yeah, they're adding an example might be the Relume library as well. So
yeah, it's kind of like Relume. It's much more. This is much more like fundamental structure. So to get you started, whereas like Relume, I suppose it's components where they're almost they're almost built for you. So this is more like what we were working with earlier on, where you just copy and paste, and things should be. You can see here, it's just set up in a container row. So yeah, it's a nice little feature he was showing that he's built out. So that's if you message Matt on Twitter, he can give you access to that.
Nice. I'm gonna share his profile here in the chat for everyone. Matt Evans.
Yeah.
There you go. There you go, Juan. And for everyone else, I'm gonna post it in the chat. Boom. Make sure when you do give him a follow and you DM him, make sure you're telling him that you're coming from us, from Floxies, because that's important. All right, let's go ahead.
So I suppose, is there any last questions about MAST?
Oh yeah, the time. I didn't even realize. Well, time flies when you're learning about REMs and EMs.
Yeah.
Which is arguably fun or not fun. Awesome. No, but thank you so much. Let's see, do we have any questions from the people here, from Floxies attending? Yeah, feel free to shoot them away now. before we wrap up for our final episode of our summer camp. So, do we have any questions from you, or is it all clear?
I suppose what I'm going to just end on, because
Mm-hmm.
we went with all the complicated stuff of MAST there, which might frighten people. But so I'm going to end on the simplicity of MAST relative to client first. Is the structure of all of our sections, followed by a container, row, and call, is the same. It's always the same. So that makes things really easy to replicate. So that's where if so I hope that people don't focus on the EM side of it and the complexity of that, and look at the simplicity of the structure of the HTML and CSS. Now, um, I don't know which one I prefer yet, so I'm not going to give one or the other, but just focus on the simplicity of what we have with this framework.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, I'm not afraid of it. I think you were clear enough for me to actually sit down and focus for at least 15-20 minutes on what you were saying about REM and EMs, which I'm telling you, in 2 years it's never happened. So you've
Okay,
done something
great.
really good today. I appreciate that. And from what I can see, yeah, Margie is also saying I'm actually very ready to take on EM. So awesome.
Nice.
You're giving us some confidence, and we're I can see some other comments here. That was great. Thank you so much. So yeah, just following that notes, it was really great. Gabrielle is clapping her hands. So thank you for that, Ailin, and thank you for being here with us. For throughout this month or these 5 weeks for our summer camp. We've never done anything like this before, and so you were our first mentor slash teacher, and I really, really enjoyed it. And I feel like we were a little bit more advanced this time, which makes me feel better, makes me feel like we're providing even more value to the people, to our community, and you're contributing to that. So I hope
Nice.
you got something good out of it as well. You're definitely helping us out here, and I couldn't be more grateful for it.
No, it's been great, and like, yeah, it's been, yeah. I was definitely very nervous at the start, so the yeah, it's definitely benefited me as well to be standing in front of people digitally, standing in front of people, and trying to teach, and then having people ask questions and try and answer those questions. Yeah, it's been really fun. So yeah, thanks for inviting me on. And as I said, the last day, this might be the end of the summer camp, but we'll definitely do it again, in the future.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And we're here every Wednesday for our Wonder Wednesday. Actually, we're taking a little bit of time off for the summer, so today is our last stream before September. So girls at Floxies, make sure you do take some time to kind of relax a little bit if you're finishing up some projects, or if you carry on working throughout the summer, do make sure that you cut yourself a little bit of time, maybe at the weekend, whenever you want to recharge. Because from September on, we're going to start again with our lives. And obviously in October, we have a ton of events coming up with the Webflow Conf and all that. So there's a lot to do. So please do look after yourselves as well, and make some time to enjoy this summer if you want, and if you can. And Ailin, the same goes for you. Thank you so much again for being here and for being, our first teacher. And I'm so happy to hear that you would like to come back again. Of course, it will be a pleasure. And yeah, we'll meet in person again in October. So I can introduce you
Yeah,
to all
see you
your
at the
students.
Webflow
So,
Conf.
yeah, see you at the Webflow Conf, and I'll see everyone else here in our Discord, because even though it's the summer and it's the holiday, I can't stay away from community and Fluxies and Discord. So take care, you all, and I'll see you around. Bye. Happy
Bye. Thanks,
summer.
everyone.
Bye bye.